Well, we did the series, we called it Godonomics. We got the website, www.godonomics.com, and our main theme was God wants us to experience liberty, prosperity, and generosity. And that generosity piece is so important because when it's coerced giving or forced giving, nobody feels generous on April 15th. That's coerced giving.
Yes,
it's like, well, I have to do this.
Right.
It doesn't change your heart. And certainly we should pay our taxes and obey the laws of the land, but it's never going to change your heart when it's coerced or it's forced. And God tells us when we give out of choice, our hearts get changed, other people's hearts get changed. Philanthropy Magazine, Who Really Cares is a book that came out a few years ago. All of them trace that Christ followers, by far, give to religious and non-religious charities across the world more than anyone else. And yet, it also says that most Christians only give 2% of their income away. So imagine how generous and what impact Christ followers are having with 2% of their income. If we up that to 3%, 4%, we could literally make a world-changing difference in the world today.
What a great charge to have out in front of us. That is so true. And it's wonderful how you and your wife are using this to impact your family and to raise your kids up and seeing that generosity is a choice.
Yeah.
It's something that sows joy back into our life. Other ideas that you have that impact families. How do we create climates of generosity in our home?
Well, my dad used to talk a lot about having a good work ethic. Galatians talks about this. It says that each person should bear their own load, but we should carry each other's burdens. And a load was actually like a backpack that Roman would carry, and you wouldn't pick up somebody else's backpack. They were in charge of carrying their own backpack. But sometimes they'd have a crushing weight on them, and that would be a burden. And so I think part of assessing from Galatians 6 is what going on here in this situation a burden or is it a load? And if I pick up somebody else's load, I'm going to cripple them emotionally, physically, and even financially. Other times I think, no, this isn't a load. This is actually a burden. I need to help carry each other's burdens.
Well, if you're just tuning in, I'm joined in the studios today with Chad Hovind, the senior pastor of Horizon Community Church in Cincinnati, Ohio. He recently taught a series on God's thoughts on our economy. It was so well received with his congregation that he decided to produce it in this really fun and interactive DVD series. I've actually seen many parts of it, and I am not an economy girl. Those are like the last conversations I want to have. And it was so entertaining and some great, simple, common sense. Godonomics is what we have been discussing, and you can find that at Godonomics.com. It is a series of 6 sessions where Chad Hovind, who is a local pastor here in Cincinnati, Ohio, has really captured the thoughts on what does God say about the almighty dollar. We've certainly found ourselves thinking about it, and I'm telling you, these are so fun. One of the chapters is, what would God say to the IRS? And what small group doesn't want to discuss that, especially around April time, right?
Without a doubt,
What is God saying to the IRS? And what would God say to Karl Marx and Alan Greenspan? And so if you're in a place where you'd really like to gain a better place of stewardship and just gain more of a sense of generosity about your life and what God has called you to in your community, I want to recommend checking out Godonomics.com and looking more at this series. And Chad, you designed this so that it could be used individually, but also for other pastors, other churches to use?
Yeah, each one is about 30 minutes long, and so individually you could do it with family devotions, you could do it on your own, you could do it in a Sunday school class, and then have 20 minutes left over, 30 minutes left over to discuss it or a community group. And we wanted to talk about issues like the idea of inflation, things like that. Sounds so theoretical, but if you look at, since 1913, the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its value. What that means is, imagine every $7 in your wallet was actually $100 worth of buying power. That's how much inflation has eaten away at your buying power. Well, think of how more generous we could be, how many more vacations we could go on, if suddenly every $7 in your wallet was $100.
Absolutely.
Well, what's happened is because of all the printing and overspending the government has done over the last 100 years, it's devalued our dollar. And, my grandpa used to come to me when we go to McDonald's together, and he'd say, I remember back when I got this ice cream cone, it was 5 cents. And I'd say, wow, Grandpa, it's 26 cents now.
Sure.
Now I take my kids, and it's, $1.05. And we're so used to prices going up, we say, well, that's just what happens. But the reason prices go up is because our dollars are worth less. And so the reason we should care about these even macro issues is we're being robbed. And the Bible talks about just weights and sound money. And in the name of helping the poor, we print money, which devalues everybody's money, which affects who the most? The poor. So a lot of these issues like health care, continued expenses are going up. Sound money would solve a lot of it. Imagine if our dollars were 97% more valuable. And that's not some conspiracy website. That's if you go to U.S. government statistics and labor.gov and you plug in how much would my $1913 be worth, it just shows you how they've been devalued. And for me, that's why it's key. And that's why good intentions, hey, we're going to help so-and-so by printing money or overspending or borrowing more, it has put us into so much trouble as a nation, individually, and families. As of today, we are $12 trillion in debt as a nation. And see, the governments don't have money, and that's what's hard to understand. So whenever you say, hey, I got a stimulus check, well, that came from somewhere. It either came from enslaving ourselves by borrowing from other countries. Like right now, we borrow primarily from China and Japan. Well, Deuteronomy said specifically to Israel, you shall not borrow from other nations. Why? Because they will be the head and you will be the tail. And what he was saying is you're going to lose your sovereignty, and that's exactly what's been happening as a nation. So when we get a stimulus check, we get money that's not ours, or we spend money we don't have, it's either coming from inflating the currency, which is we print, and that's the Alan Greenspan week. We print and print and print and print, and Ben Bernanke and others, and devalue the dollar, hurting the poor the most. We enslave ourselves to other nations, which give them power over us, or we tax the producer. And that's why even John F. Kennedy said the best way to increase tax revenue is to decrease the tax rate. So it's like a lemonade stand. If I said I'm going to sell my lemonade for $10 a cup, not a lot of people are going to buy that cup. But if I said I want to sell it for $1 each, I'd have a whole lot more lemonade being sold. And what John F. Kennedy realized is that by decreasing the tax revenue, you could have a whole lot more businesses start because they wouldn't have the burden of all that bureaucracy. And by having a lot more businesses, you'd have more income coming into the government with a lower tax rate. And so as you get into tax rates, when you don't tax the producer as much, they have more savings, so they invest in more jobs. When you increase government, you're actually consuming from the private sector. And by consuming from that, you destroy real job growth by taking the productive money and you move it into the unproductive part of the economy. And that's why it's very important.
Well, the learning just does not end for me in this spot. I have to believe there are other ladies out there as well who would find this Godonomics topic to be a great learning of getting answers to some of those tough questions. When are we helping versus when are we enabling? How do we save more in life? And how do we unleash more of this joy of generosity? You can find this material at Godonomics.com. And Chad Hovind, the senior pastor at Horizons Community Church here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And all the best to you and your family as you continue to be caught up in the bigger story of the things of God.
This is Erin, and I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Broadcasting is a small part of what we do at Erin Campbell Ministries. My team and I are busy working hard to deliver these broadcasts as well as powerful conferences and live seminars in your area. It's our passion that you have the tools necessary to be an ambassador for Christ in all circumstances. Visit erincampbellministries.org to listen to our archived radio shows and also browse through the ministry schedule for upcoming conferences. We would love to hear how this program has impacted your life. Visit erincampbellministries.org and email us from there. Erin Campbell Ministries is a listener and volunteer-supported ministry. Any financial gift you give keeps us moving towards the passionate pursuit of meeting the unique needs of Christian women at every stage of her faith. Join us again next week for Conversations in Courage with Emily Bauman.